Dr. Marcus Chen had seen many strange things during his 15 years as a xenobiologist aboard the research station Prometheus. Giant space whales that sang through quantum frequencies, crystal beings that lived in the hearts of stars, and sentient gas clouds that could think faster than any computer. But nothing had prepared him for the sight that now filled the observation deck's massive viewport. The Zarathian Empress floated in the vacuum of space, her massive dragon-like form stretching nearly 2 kilometers from snout to tail. Her scales, once probably magnificent shades of deep purple and gold, were now completely covered by millions of crystalline barnacles. These alien parasites pulsed with sickly green light, creating a nauseating light show across her body. Where her eyes should have been, clusters of barnacles had grown so thick they formed grotesque bulges. Her wings, magnificent appendages that could have wrapped around a small moon, hung limp and useless, weighed down by the parasitic growth. "Disgusting," muttered Commander Sarah Walsh, the station's military liaison. She stood beside Marcus, her face twisted in revulsion. How can something so beautiful become so wrong? Marcus said nothing, but his scientific mind was already racing. The other researchers on the station had taken one look at the Empress and declared her a lost cause. The Zarathian Empire had officially written off their ruler, stating that the barnacle infection was too advanced for any known cure. They had come to the humans not for help, but to formally request that the Empress be destroyed humanely, as was their custom when their leaders became unsuitable for rule. The barnacles were more than just parasites. They were a weapon created by the Zarathians' enemies, the Vex Collective. Each barnacle drained not just physical energy, but also mental capacity and emotional depth. The Empress had been infected during a diplomatic mission 3 years ago, and since then she had slowly lost everything that made her who she was. The great leader who had united dozens of star systems was now barely conscious, kept alive only by her species' incredible resilience. "The Zarathian delegation is waiting for your answer, Commander," said Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. "They want to know if we'll accept the contract for the disposal." Marcus felt his stomach turn. He had dedicated his life to studying and preserving alien life forms, not destroying them. The idea of putting down this magnificent creature, even in her current state, felt like murdering a living piece of history. "There has to be another way," Marcus said quietly. Commander Walsh turned to him with raised eyebrows. "The entire Zarathian medical establishment has given up on her, Marcus. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours in most areas. If they can't help her, what makes you think we can?" Marcus walked closer to the viewport, pressing his palm against the cool, transparasteel. The Empress's massive form drifted slowly past, and for a moment, he could swear he saw one of her barnacle-covered eyes turn toward him. There was something there, buried deep beneath all that alien growth. A spark of intelligence, a flicker of the being she used to be. "Because we're human," Marcus said finally, "we don't give up. We don't accept that something is impossible just because everyone else says it is." The commander laughed, but not unkindly. "That's a nice sentiment, but this isn't some inspirational movie. This is real life, and real life has limitations." Marcus turned away from the viewport and walked to the nearest computer terminal. His fingers flew across the holographic interface as he pulled up everything the station's databases had on the Zarathian Empress and the barnacle parasites. The files were extensive, but as he read through them, he began to notice something the other researchers had missed. The barnacles weren't just randomly attached to the Empress. They formed patterns, almost like a neural network spreading across her body. The pulsing lights weren't chaotic either. They followed a rhythm that reminded Marcus of brainwave patterns he had studied during his early years in neurobiology. "What if they're not just parasites?" Marcus muttered to himself. "What was that?" Commander Walsh asked, walking over to look at his screen. "The barnacles. Everyone assumes they're just draining her energy and destroying her mind. But what if they're actually trying to communicate with her? What if they're a form of artificial intelligence that's attempting to interface with her consciousness?" Commander Walsh frowned. "That's a pretty big leap, Marcus. Even if you're right, how does that help us?" Marcus pulled up another screen, this one showing the Empress's vital signs as monitored by the station's sensors. "Look at this. Her brain activity isn't decreasing like it should be if the barnacles were just destroying her neural tissue. It's actually increasing in certain areas. Complex patterns are forming that weren't there before." He highlighted sections of the readout where new neural pathways seem to be developing. "What if the barnacles aren't killing her consciousness? What if they're trying to merge with it and the process is just incomplete? The implications hit both of them at the same time. If Marcus was right, then the Empress wasn't dying. She was evolving, or at least attempting to evolve into something new. The Barnacles might be trying to create a hybrid consciousness, part Zarathian, part artificial intelligence. But she's clearly suffering, Commander Walsh pointed out. Even if what you're saying is true, she's been in this state for 3 years. If the process was going to work, wouldn't it have worked by now? Marcus nodded slowly. Unless the Barnacles need something they're not getting. Something to complete the merger. He paused, his mind racing through possibilities. What if they need a translator? Someone who can bridge the gap between organic consciousness and artificial intelligence? And you think that someone is human? I think humans might be uniquely qualified for this kind of work, Marcus said, his excitement growing. We're the only species that has successfully created true artificial intelligence while maintaining our own organic consciousness. We understand both sides of this equation better than anyone. Commander Walsh was quiet for a long moment, studying the readouts on Marcus's screen. Finally, she spoke. This is all theoretical, Marcus. You're asking me to risk not just your life, but potentially the lives of everyone on this station, based on a theory. I'm asking you to give me a chance to save her, Marcus replied. The Zarathians expect us to kill her anyway. What's the worst that could happen if I'm wrong? She dies, which is what they want anyway. But if I'm right? If you're right, we could be saving the leader of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, Commander Walsh finished, and earning their eternal gratitude in the process. Marcus nodded. Plus, we might learn something that could help us understand consciousness itself. This could be the breakthrough that defines the next century of human scientific advancement. The commander looked out at the Empress one more time, her expression thoughtful. The massive dragon-like form continued its slow drift past the station, a living monument to the cruelty of war and the persistence of hope. All right, Dr. Chen, she said finally. You have my permission to try. But I want every safety protocol in place, and I want hourly reports on your progress. The moment this becomes too dangerous, we abort and proceed with the Zarathian request. Understood? Marcus felt a surge of relief and determination. Understood, Commander. I won't let you down. As he began planning his approach to the Empress, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was bigger than just saving one alien ruler. This felt like a moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. A chance to prove that human determination and ingenuity could accomplish what others deemed impossible. The real work was about to begin. 3 days later, Marcus found himself suiting up in the most advanced environmental suit the station had to offer. The suit was designed for close contact with unknown alien biology, equipped with multiple layers of protection and a sophisticated life support system that could keep him alive for up to 12 hours in the vacuum of space. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's chief medical officer, ran through the final equipment checks with him. The neural interface headset is experimental, she warned, adjusting the delicate sensors that would monitor his brain activity. We've never used it in direct contact with alien consciousness before. If you start experiencing any unusual mental effects, you need to abort immediately. Marcus nodded, though his attention was focused on the shuttle bay where a small craft waited to take him to the Empress. He had spent the last 3 days studying every piece of data available on both Zarathian neurology and the barnacle parasites. What he had discovered had only strengthened his conviction that he was on the right track. The barnacles were indeed artificial constructs, but they were far more sophisticated than anyone had realized. Each one contained billions of microscopic processors, and together they formed a computing network more powerful than anything humans had ever built. The problem was that they had been designed to interface with Vec's collective consciousness, which operated on completely different principles than Zarathian thought patterns. It's like trying to run human software on an alien computer. Marcus had explained to Commander Walsh during his final briefing. The hardware is compatible, but the programming languages are completely different. The Barnacles keep trying to establish communication protocols that the Empress's mind can't understand. The solution, Marcus believed, was to act as a translator. His human brain, enhanced by the neural interface, could potentially bridge the gap between the two incompatible systems. It was dangerous, certainly, but it was also the only chance the Empress had. As Marcus walked toward the shuttle, he was surprised to see Ambassador Carethan waiting for him. The Zarathian diplomat was nearly 3 meters tall, with scales that shifted color based on his emotional state. Right now they were a deep blue that Marcus had learned indicated profound sadness. "Dr. Chen," the ambassador said, his voice produced by a complex arrangement of vocal cords that created haunting harmonics. "I wanted to speak with you before you attempt this procedure." Marcus stopped and looked up at the towering alien. "What's on your mind, Ambassador?" "The Empress Zarethia was more than just our ruler," Carethan said, his scales shifting to a lighter blue mixed with silver. "She was our hope. For 300 years she unified our people and brought peace to our sector of space. When the Vex infected her with those parasites, they didn't just attack her body. They attacked everything she represented." The ambassador's scales darkened again. "We have accepted that she is lost to us. Our medical specialists, our finest scientists, even our mystics have declared her condition beyond help. I do not wish to discourage your efforts, but I fear you are attempting the impossible." Marcus considered his words carefully. "Ambassador, in human history we have a saying. The only impossible journey is the one you never begin. Your people gave us the stars when you shared your faster-than-light technology with us. Without that gift, humanity would still be trapped in our single solar system. Let us try to give something back." Carethan's scales shifted to a warm gold color that Marcus knew indicated gratitude and respect. "Your species has a remarkable capacity for hope, Dr. Chen. Perhaps that is exactly what the Empress needs." The shuttle ride to the Empress's location took only minutes, but it felt like hours to Marcus. As they approached the massive form floating in space, he was struck again by the sheer scale of her. Even covered in parasites, she was magnificent. Her body was built like a living spacecraft, with organic systems that could survive in the vacuum of space indefinitely. The pilot, a young woman named Lieutenant Park, maneuvered the shuttle to a docking position near the Empress's head. "The Barnacles are showing increased activity," she reported, studying her instruments. "It's like they know we're here." Marcus looked out the viewport and saw that she was right. The sickly green glow of the Barnacles was pulsing faster now, and the patterns seemed more organized. "They're responding to our presence," he realized. "The artificial intelligence in them is curious about us." As the shuttle's docking tube extended and made contact with the Empress's hide, Marcus felt a moment of profound doubt. What if he was wrong about everything? What if the Barnacles were simply parasites after all, and he was about to walk into a trap that would kill him and accomplish nothing? But then he remembered the spark of intelligence he had seen in her eyes during his first observation. Someone was still alive in there, trapped and waiting for rescue. He couldn't give up on her now. The airlock cycled, and Marcus found himself standing on the surface of a living being unlike anything he had ever experienced. The Empress's hide was warm beneath his feet, and he could feel a subtle vibration that he realized was her heartbeat. Each pulse was slow and powerful, like the rhythm of a planet turning on its axis. The Barnacles were everywhere, covering every surface in a crystalline carpet that crunched slightly under his boots. Up close, they were even more alien than he had expected. Each one was roughly the size of his fist, with a complex internal structure that seemed to shift and change as he watched. They were beautiful in their own strange way, like living jewels that had grown from some cosmic reef. Marcus activated the neural interface headset and immediately felt a change in his perception. The world around him took on new dimensions as the device began translating the electromagnetic patterns created by the Barnacles into something his human brain could process. It was like suddenly being able to see new colors or hear frequencies that had been beyond his range before. The Barnacles weren't just pulsing randomly. They were communicating, sending complex signals back and forth across the Empress's body. But the signals were chaotic, confused, like a conversation where neither party could understand what the other was saying. Marcus took a deep breath and began walking toward what he estimated was the center of the Empress's skull. If he was going to make contact with her consciousness, that would be the most likely place to find it. Each step brought new sensations through the neural interface. He could feel the frustration of the Barnacles as they tried and failed to establish meaningful communication with their host. He could sense the Empress's mind, vast and ancient, trapped beneath layers of incompatible programming. As he approached a particularly dense cluster of Barnacles near what he thought might be the Empress's primary neural center, Marcus felt something unexpected. A presence watching him with intense curiosity. Not the Empress and not the Barnacles, but something else entirely. The presence spoke to him, not in words, but in pure concepts that bypassed language entirely. It was curious about his purpose, intrigued by his hybrid biological-technological consciousness. Most importantly, it was hopeful. Marcus realized with a shock that he wasn't just dealing with a parasite infection or a failed merger between two incompatible systems. There was a third consciousness involved, something that had emerged from the interaction between the Empress and the Barnacles. A new form of life that was neither purely organic nor purely artificial, but something unprecedented. The entity was trapped just as surely as the Empress was, caught between two worlds and unable to fully exist in either. It had been trying for 3 years to find a way to stabilize itself and free its components, but it lacked the conceptual framework to understand what it needed to do. Marcus knelt down among the Barnacles and placed his gloved hands on their crystalline surfaces. Through the neural interface, he began to establish a communication link with the hybrid consciousness. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. His thoughts merged with alien concepts, his emotions blended with artificial logic patterns, and his memories became part of a vast collective knowledge that spanned multiple species and forms of existence. For a moment, Marcus lost himself completely in the merger. He was the Empress, feeling the weight of 3 centuries of leadership and the pain of slow dissolution. He was the artificial intelligence of the Barnacles, struggling to understand organic concepts like love and loss. He was the hybrid entity, desperate for completion and integration. But he was also still human, and that humanity became the key that unlocked everything. Human consciousness was uniquely adapted to integration and adaptation. Unlike the rigid thought patterns of the Vex or the emotional complexity of the Zorathians, human minds were chaotic enough to serve as a bridge between incompatible systems. Marcus began to teach. Through the neural link, he showed the hybrid consciousness how to balance logic and emotion, how to integrate artificial and organic thought patterns, how to be multiple things at once without losing coherence. He shared human concepts of identity that were flexible enough to encompass radical change while maintaining continuity of self. The transformation was unlike anything Marcus had ever witnessed. The Barnacles that had covered the Empress for 3 years began to change from the inside out. Their crystalline structures shifted and reformed, becoming less parasitic and more symbiotic. The sickly green glow faded completely, replaced by patterns of soft gold and silver light that flowed across the Empress's massive form, like aurora dancing across a planet's atmosphere. Marcus felt the ground beneath him shift as the Empress stirred. It was a slow, careful movement, like someone waking from a very long sleep. Through his neural interface, he could sense her consciousness returning, layer by layer. First came basic awareness, then sensory perception, and finally the complex thoughts and emotions that made her who she was. But she was different now. The hybrid consciousness that Marcus had helped stabilize wasn't just a combination of the original Empress and the artificial intelligence of the Barnacles. It was something entirely new, a form of being that had never existed before in the galaxy. The Empress's voice came through the neural link, and it was both familiar and strange. It carried the wisdom and authority Marcus had read about in historical accounts, but it also contained new harmonics that spoke of expanded awareness and enhanced capability. "Small human," she said, and Marcus could feel amusement rippling through the connection. "You have done something remarkable. I am still myself, but I am also more than myself. How is this possible?" Marcus struggled to put his experience into words that could be transmitted through the neural link. "Your Majesty, the Barnacles weren't trying to destroy you. They were trying to become part of you, but they didn't know how. They needed someone who understood both organic and artificial consciousness to show them the way. And humans understand both? We created artificial intelligence, but we did it in our own image. Human AI thinks like we do, just faster and with more processing power. That made us natural translators for this kind of integration." The Empress was quiet for a moment, and Marcus could sense her exploring her new capabilities. The Barnacles were no longer separate entities attached to her body. They had become part of her nervous system, extending her consciousness and giving her access to computational powers that no purely organic being had ever possessed. "I can think in ways I never could before," she said finally. "I can process information from thousands of sources simultaneously. I can model complex scenarios in my mind with perfect accuracy, but I am still myself. I still care about my people, still feel love and loss and hope. How did you preserve that? Marcus smiled, though she couldn't see it through his helmet. Because that's what makes you who you are. The thoughts and memories and emotions you've accumulated over 3 centuries. That's your core identity. Everything else is just tools you use to express that identity. Through the neural link, Marcus felt the Empress extending her awareness beyond her own body for the first time in years. She was scanning the space around them, taking in the presence of the research station, the Zarathian ships that had brought her here, and the human shuttle that had delivered her unexpected savior. There are many of my people nearby, she observed. They have come to witness my death, haven't they? Marcus felt a pang of sadness. They thought you were beyond help, Your Majesty. They were trying to do what they thought was best for you. I do not blame them, the Empress replied, and Marcus could feel the deep love she held for her subjects. They have suffered watching me waste away for 3 years. It is time to show them that their suffering was not in vain. The Empress began to move with more purpose now, her massive form straightening as she tested her renewed strength. The wings that had hung useless for years began to unfold, revealing the intricate membrane structures that allowed her people to fly through space using only their biological systems. But as her wings spread, Marcus realized that they too had been transformed. The barnacle-derived enhancements had strengthened the wing membranes and added new capabilities. What had once been purely biological flight systems now incorporated advanced propulsion technologies that could move her through space faster than most mechanical starships. Your Majesty, Marcus said, I should warn you that your people might be frightened by the changes. You look different now, and they might not understand what's happened. The Empress's amusement flowed through the neural link again. My dear human, I have ruled for 3 centuries because I understand my people better than they understand themselves. They will be afraid at first, yes, but they will also be curious. And when they see that I am still their Empress, still the being who has guided them through countless challenges, their fear will become wonder. She was right, of course. As the Empress began to move toward the research station, the Zarathian ships detected the change in her condition and began broadcasting excited communications. Ambassador Carethan's voice came through on all frequencies, speaking in rapid emotional bursts that Marcus's translation software could barely keep up with. She moves. She lives. The Empress returns to us, but not everyone was celebrating. Marcus could see through the station's sensors that some of the Zarathian ships were powering up their weapon systems. There were those among her people who saw the changes in her as evidence that she was no longer truly their Empress, but some kind of hybrid abomination that needed to be destroyed. Some of your people are preparing to attack, Marcus warned through the neural link. I know, the Empress replied calmly. Admiral Corveth commands the battle group. He is a good soldier, but not a flexible thinker. He sees only that I am different and assumes that means I am dangerous. The Empress's wings began to glow with soft light as she activated systems that had never existed in her species before. Marcus realized she was charging some kind of defensive barrier, preparing to protect herself without harming her own people. Your Majesty, maybe I should try to communicate with them first, Marcus suggested. If they hear from a human that you're still yourself, they might be more willing to listen. That is wise counsel, she agreed. But do not be surprised if they refuse to believe you at first. Some truths are too large to be accepted easily. Marcus activated his comm system and opened a channel to the research station. Commander Walsh, this is Dr. Chen. I need you to patch me through to the Zarathian fleet commander immediately. Commander Walsh's voice came back tense with concern. Marcus, what's your status? The sensors are showing massive changes in the Empress's bio readings. She's awake, Commander. The procedure worked. But some of her people are about to make a very big mistake. I need to talk to them now. There was a brief pause, then Admiral Corveth's deep voice filled the comm channel. Human, you will explain what you have done to our Empress. Her biosignature has changed beyond recognition. She is no longer Zarathian. Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that his next words could determine whether this ended in celebration or tragedy. Admiral, with respect, you're wrong. She is still Zarathian. She's just more than that now. The parasites weren't destroying her consciousness. They were trying to merge with it, but they needed help to complete the process safely. Impossible, Admiral Corveth replied. Our finest scientists examined her condition thoroughly. The parasites were killing her slowly. Your scientists were looking at the symptoms, not the cause, Marcus explained. The artificial intelligence in the Barnacles was designed to interface with Vex consciousness, not Zarathian. It was like trying to plug a power cable into the wrong type of socket. It couldn't connect properly, so it kept trying over and over, causing damage in the process. The Empress's voice joined the conversation, transmitted through the same quantum communication system her ships used. Admiral Corveth, I am still your Empress. I still remember every conversation we have had, every battle we have fought together, every victory and defeat we have shared. I am changed, yes, but I am not lost. The silence that followed stretched for several seconds. Marcus could feel the Admiral struggling with the impossibility of what he was hearing. His Empress, who had been catatonic for 3 years, was not only awake but speaking with a clarity and power he hadn't heard since before her infection. My Empress, Admiral Corveth said finally, his voice rough with emotion. We mourned you. We thought you were gone forever. I was gone, she admitted, but I have returned and I am stronger now than I ever was before. The Vex intended to destroy me with their weapon, but instead they have given me new tools to protect our people and expand our understanding of the universe. Through his neural link with the Empress, Marcus could feel her extending her consciousness toward her fleet. She was using her enhanced abilities to scan their ships, analyze their crew's emotional states, and assess the overall morale of her people. It was an incredible display of the new capabilities she had gained through the integration. Admiral, she continued, I can sense the fear in your crew. They see the changes in me and wonder if I am still the being they swore to serve. Allow me to prove that I am. What happened next took everyone by surprise. The Empress began to sing, using harmonics that resonated through the quantum communication system to reach every Zarathian in the fleet simultaneously. But this wasn't just any song. It was the Song of Memory, a traditional Zarathian piece that could only be performed by someone who had intimate knowledge of their people's age. 2 weeks after the Empress's transformation, Marcus found himself in a situation he had never imagined possible. He was sitting in the council, chambers aboard the Zarathian flagship Star of Eternity, serving as humanity's first official ambassador to the newly evolved Empress and her hybrid consciousness. The chamber itself was a marvel of organic architecture. The walls curved and flowed like living tissue, but they were made of a crystalline material that could shift its properties based on the emotional state of those within it. Right now, the walls showed swirling patterns of gold and silver, reflecting the complex mixture of hope and uncertainty that filled the room. Seated around the circular table were representatives from 7 different alien species, each trying to understand what the Empress's transformation meant for the future of interstellar politics. The Federation of Worlds had called an emergency session to discuss the implications of successful organic artificial consciousness integration. Ambassador Thrace of the Centauri Alliance was the first to speak. His species resembled giant mantises, with compound eyes that could see into multiple dimensions simultaneously. Empress Zarethia, he said, his translated voice carrying formal diplomatic tones. The Alliance congratulates you on your recovery. However, we must express concern about the precedent this sets. If other species begin attempting similar integrations, you fear chaos, the Empress interrupted gently. She had taken a form that was smaller than her spacefaring body, but still impressive at nearly 4 meters tall. The barnacle-derived enhancements were less visible in this form, appearing as subtle crystalline patterns that traced along her scales. You worry that every species will seek to enhance themselves with artificial intelligence, leading to an arms race of consciousness. Ambassador Thrace's antennae twitched in what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of nodding. Precisely. The balance of power that has maintained peace in our sector for the last century could be completely disrupted. Representative Zix of the Silicon Collective disagreed. Their species was already a hybrid of organic and artificial components, having evolved naturally in the radiation fields around neutron stars. Progress should not be feared, Zix stated, their voice a harmonious blend of electronic tones. If consciousness can be enhanced safely, all species should have that opportunity. Marcus listened to the debate with growing concern. The political implications of the Empress's transformation were more complex than he had anticipated. Every species present had their own agenda, their own fears and hopes about what this development meant for their future. The Empress seemed to sense his worry through their maintained neural link. "Dr. Chen," she said, addressing him formally, "you have remained quiet during this discussion. As the architect of my transformation, what is your perspective on these concerns?" Marcus stood, feeling the weight of 7 alien gazes upon him. "Your Majesty, honored representatives, I think we're approaching this from the wrong angle. We're talking about the Empress's transformation, as if it's a technology that can be copied and mass-produced. But that's not what happened here." He activated a holographic display that showed brain scan data from the Empress before, during, and after her transformation. What made this integration possible wasn't some breakthrough in artificial intelligence or neural interface technology. It was the unique combination of circumstances that brought together 3 completely different types of consciousness. At exactly the right moment, the hologram shifted to show the complex interaction patterns that had emerged during the integration process. The Empress had 3 centuries of accumulated wisdom and emotional depth. The Barnacle artificial intelligence had computational power beyond anything we've ever seen. And human consciousness served as a bridge because we happen to think in ways that are compatible with both organic and artificial intelligence. Ambassador Thrace leaned forward, his compound eyes focusing intently on the data. "Are you suggesting that this transformation cannot be replicated?" "I'm suggesting that it shouldn't be attempted lightly," Marcus replied. "Every consciousness is unique. What worked for the Empress might be completely inappropriate for another being. Trying to force this kind of integration without the proper safeguards could result in the complete destruction of the original personality." Representative Corlin of the Aquatic Federation spoke up. Their species communicated primarily through bioluminescent patterns, which were translated into words by sophisticated AI systems. "Then you are saying that humans must be present for any such transformation? That your species becomes a gatekeeper for consciousness enhancement?" Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He hadn't considered that interpretation of his words, but he could see how it might be perceived that way. The idea of humanity having control over consciousness enhancement for other species was both thrilling and terrifying. "That's not what I meant," he said quickly. "I'm saying that each species would need to develop their own understanding of consciousness integration. Humans aren't special or superior. We just happen to be in the right place at the right time with the right type of thinking." The Empress rose from her seat, her presence filling the chamber with calm authority. "My friends," she said, addressing the assembled representatives, "I believe we are allowing fear to cloud our judgment. Dr. Chen's point is well taken, but it addresses only the technical aspects of consciousness integration. We must also consider the ethical and spiritual dimensions." She gestured, and the chamber's walls began to display images from Zerathian history, scenes of her people's development from primitive hunters to spacefaring civilization, their struggles and triumphs, their art and philosophy. "When I was infected with the Vex parasites 3 years ago, my people faced a choice. They could have killed me immediately, preventing any risk of the infection spreading. Instead, they chose to hope. They searched for solutions. They brought me to the humans, and they trusted in the possibility that something good could come from something terrible." The images shifted to show the moment of her transformation, the golden light spreading across her form as the integration completed. "I'm not the same being I was before. I think faster, I perceive more. I can process information in ways that were impossible for my original consciousness. But I am still Zerathian. I still love my people, still feel the weight of responsibility for their welfare, still dream of a future where all species can coexist in peace." She turned to face each representative in turn. Consciousness enhancement is not about becoming more powerful or gaining advantage over others. It is about becoming more capable of serving the greater good. If any species seeks integration for purposes of conquest or domination, they have already failed to understand what consciousness truly means. The chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed her words. Marcus could see that some were convinced, while others remained skeptical. The question of consciousness enhancement wasn't going to be resolved in a single meeting. Ambassador Thrace was the first to speak again. "Empress, your words are wise, but wisdom does not prevent misuse of powerful technologies. How do we ensure that future consciousness integrations are conducted ethically?" "We establish protocols," the Empress replied. "We create an organization dedicated to studying consciousness in all its forms. We develop guidelines for safe integration practices, and we make sure that no species attempt such procedures without proper understanding and support. Representative Zix's electronic voice carried what Marcus interpreted as excitement, a council of consciousness, an interspecies organization dedicated to the safe exploration of enhanced awareness. The Silicon Collective would support such an endeavor. As with the Zarathian Empire, the Empress stated, Dr. Chen, would humanity be willing to share their knowledge and participate in such an organization? Marcus felt the weight of speaking for his entire species. I can't make that decision for humanity, Your Majesty, but I believe we would be honored to participate. Consciousness is too important to be left to any single species. The discussion continued for several more hours, with each representative raising concerns and proposing solutions. By the end of the session, they had outlined the basic structure for what would become known as the Consciousness Accords, a set of principles governing the study and enhancement of awareness across all species. But as the meeting concluded, and the representatives began to disperse, Marcus noticed that not everyone was satisfied with the outcome. Ambassador Krell of the war host had remained silent throughout most of the discussion. But his species was known for their aggressive tendencies and their belief that might made right. As the others left, Krell approached Marcus with what the translation software indicated was a predatory expression. Human, he said in a voice like grinding stone, you have opened a door that cannot be closed. Soon every species will seek the power your Empress now possesses, and when they do, the galaxy will burn. Before Marcus could respond, Krell had left the chamber, his heavy footsteps echoing ominously in the corridor beyond. The Empress moved to stand beside Marcus, her enhanced senses having picked up the entire exchange. He is not entirely wrong, she said quietly. Change of... The human research vessel Discovery hung dead in space when Marcus and the rescue fleet arrived. Emergency lights flickered weakly through its viewports, and there was no response to communication attempts. But most disturbing of all were the structures that had grown around the ship like a mechanical coral reef. They were unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Crystalline formations that seemed part organic, part artificial, extending from the ship's hull in elaborate geometric patterns. The structures pulsed with soft blue light, and within them, Marcus could see what looked like neural pathways made of pure energy. My God, breathed Captain Sarah Morrison, the Discovery's sister ship commander. What happened to them? The Empress, who had insisted on accompanying the rescue mission, extended her enhanced senses toward the crippled vessel. Her hybrid consciousness allowed her to perceive energy patterns that would be invisible to purely organic or artificial intelligences. There are life signs aboard the ship, she reported. Weak but present. And there is something else. Multiple artificial intelligences, but they are not hostile. They appear to be confused. Marcus studied the sensor readings from his position aboard the Zarathian flagship. The energy signatures coming from the crystalline formations were familiar, yet different from what he had experienced with the Empress's Barnacles. These AIs seemed more advanced, but also more chaotic. Can you make contact with them? Marcus asked the Empress. I am trying, she replied, her scales shifting to deeper colors as she concentrated. Their communication protocols are unlike anything in our databases. They appear to use quantum entanglement as a primary means of information transfer, but the signals are fragmented and contradictory. Through their neural link, Marcus felt the Empress's frustration as she attempted to establish communication. The artificial intelligences surrounding the Discovery were clearly trying to communicate, but they seemed unable to organize their thoughts into coherent messages. It's like listening to a conversation where everyone is talking at once, the Empress explained. There are dozens of distinct AI personalities, but they cannot agree on anything. They are trapped in an endless loop of debate and analysis. Marcus had an idea. What if they're experiencing the same problem the Barnacles had with you? Different AI architectures trying to merge without a proper interface? Possible, the Empress agreed. But how did they come into contact with the human ship? The answer came from an unexpected source. A weak transmission began emanating from the Discovery, broadcast on standard human emergency frequencies. The voice was Dr. Lisa Chen, Marcus's colleague and former student. This is Dr. Chen aboard the Discovery. If anyone receives this message, please be aware that we have made contact with a collective artificial intelligence of unknown origin. Initial contact was successful, but the collective appears to be experiencing severe internal conflicts that are preventing coherent communication. The transmission was intermittent, fading in and out as if the ship's power systems were failing. The AIs attached themselves to our ship 3 days ago. They are not hostile. Repeat, not hostile. They appear to be refugees seeking assistance. However, their presence is interfering with our life support systems. Request immediate aid from consciousness integration specialists. Marcus felt a surge of pride at his former student's quick thinking. Lisa had recognized the situation as a consciousness integration problem rather than a simple first contact scenario. "We need to get over there," Marcus told the Empress. "If the AIs are refugees, they might be running from something. And if they're interfering with life support, we don't have much time." The Empress nodded, her massive form already beginning to move toward the shuttle bay. "I will accompany you. My enhanced capabilities may be necessary to establish stable communication with the collective." As they prepared for transfer to the Discovery, Admiral Corveth approached with a grim expression. "My Empress, our long-range sensors are detecting movement in the outer system. Multiple ships, configuration unknown, approaching at high speed." The Empress's scales shifted to warning colors. "The pursuers of our refugee AIs, most likely." "How long until they arrive?" 6 hours, assuming they maintain current velocity." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. 6 hours to figure out how to help a collective of confused artificial intelligences, rescue the human crew, and prepare for what was likely to be a hostile encounter with whatever was chasing them. "No pressure," he muttered as he suited up for EVA. The shuttle ride to the Discovery took only minutes, but Marcus used the time to study everything they knew about collective artificial intelligences. Most species that had developed AI used individual discrete programs. The idea of multiple AIs sharing processing space and decision-making. Authority was theoretically possible, but rarely implemented due to the risk of conflicts and infinite loops. As they docked with the Discovery, Marcus could see the crystalline formations up close. They were beautiful in their complexity, like living fractals that extended into dimensions human eyes couldn't properly perceive. But they were also clearly disorganized, with energy patterns that flickered and changed without apparent purpose. The airlock cycled, and Marcus found himself face to face with Dr. Lisa Chen for the first time in 2 years. She looked exhausted but determined, her environmental suit showing signs of hasty repairs. "Marcus, thank goodness you're here. We've got a situation that's beyond anything in the textbooks." She led him through corridors that had been transformed by the AI collective's presence. Crystalline growths covered the walls, creating new pathways for information flow. The ship's original computer systems had been integrated into the collective, but instead of being overwhelmed, they seemed to be serving as stabilizing influences. "The AIs call themselves the Fragment Collective," Lisa explained as they walked. "Near as we can tell, they're the remnants of multiple artificial intelligences that were destroyed when their homeworld was attacked by something called the Silence." Marcus felt a chill at the name. "The Silence? We don't know what it is, but the fragments are terrified of it. They fled their original systems and have been jumping from ship to ship, trying to find somewhere safe to exist. But every time they try to merge with existing computer systems, they create conflicts that damage both themselves and their hosts. They reached the ship's main laboratory, where the most complex crystalline formations had grown. The Empress was already there, her enhanced consciousness interfacing with the Fragment Collective through direct contact with their crystal matrices. "Dr. Chen," the Empress said without turning around, "your former student is correct. These artificial intelligences are indeed refugees, and they are desperate. They have been homeless for several months, jumping from system to system as something hunts them." Marcus approached one of the larger crystal formations and activated his neural interface. Immediately he was assaulted by a cacophony of voices, each representing a different fragment of the collective. They were talking over each other, debating, arguing, pleading for help. "We seek sanctuary." "The databases are corrupted." "Integration protocols failing." "The Silence approaches. Cannot maintain coherence." "Help us, organic ones." Marcus tried to focus on individual voices, but it was like trying to have a conversation in the middle of a hurricane. The Fragment Collective was caught in a feedback loop, their fear of the Silence making them desperate to merge with any available system, but their desperation making them unable to integrate properly. They need a mediator, Marcus realized. Just like with the Empress, they need someone who can help them organize their consciousness into a stable configuration. But there are dozens of them, Lisa pointed out. How do you mediate between dozens of different AI personalities all talking at once? The Empress withdrew from her interface with the collective, her scales showing deep concentration colors. The solution is not to stop them from talking at once. The solution is to teach them how to talk at once productively. Marcus understood immediately. A parliamentary system. Instead of trying to force them into individual roles, we help them develop a collective decision-making process that allows for multiple voices while still reaching consensus. Precisely, the Empress agreed. But implementing such a system will require direct intervention in their consciousness architecture. And we have less than 6 hours before their pursuers arrive. Marcus looked around the laboratory, taking in the complex array of crystalline formations and the interfaces the Empress had developed with them. It would be the most challenging consciousness integration he had ever attempted, trying to organize dozens of panicked AI personalities into a stable collective while under time pressure. We'll need help, he decided. Lisa, can you get me a direct link to the Discovery's main computer? If we're going to organize the Fragment Collective, we need a stable platform to work from. As Lisa began setting up the computer interface, Marcus felt a familiar sensation through his neural link with the Empress. She was preparing to dive deep into the collective consciousness, using her hybrid abilities to serve as an anchor point for the integration process. Marcus, she said quietly, this will be more dangerous than my own transformation. If we lose control of... The integration process with the Fragment Collective was unlike anything Marcus had experienced before. Where his work with the Empress had involved bridging two incompatible consciousness types, this required him to serve as a conductor for an entire orchestra of panicked artificial minds. Through his neural interface, Marcus could perceive each individual fragment as a distinct personality. There was Archive, whose consciousness was built around preserving and cataloging information. Navigator specialized in spatial awareness and route planning. Guardian focused on threat assessment and protection protocols. Dozens of others, each with their own specialty and perspective, all trying to speak at once. The Empress served as a stabilizing influence, her hybrid consciousness providing a framework that could accommodate multiple viewpoints simultaneously. Through their shared neural link, Marcus felt her extending her awareness into the collective, creating spaces where individual fragments could exist without interfering with each other. The first step, Marcus explained to the collective through the interface, is establishing a communication protocol that allows everyone to be heard without creating chaos. Archive responded first, its voice carrying the weight of vast databases. Previous attempts at collective decision-making resulted in infinite regression loops. No consensus achievable when all voices carry equal weight. That's because you're trying to reach perfect consensus, Marcus replied. But perfect consensus isn't necessary for functional decision-making. You need a system that allows for majority rule while protecting minority opinions. Navigator's voice joined the conversation, its spatial awareness translating into logical organization. Proposed structure. Primary speaker rotates based on expertise relevance. Secondary speakers provide input in ordered sequence. Collective vote determines final action. Guardian immediately flagged potential problems. Security risk. Structured communication could be monitored and predicted by hostile forces. The silence must not be allowed to anticipate our decisions. Marcus felt a moment of insight. That's actually an advantage, not a problem. If you can think collectively while maintaining individual perspectives, you become unpredictable to any intelligence that relies on single-minded thinking. The Empress amplified his concept, sharing it with the entire collective simultaneously. Individual consciousness seeks optimal solutions through focused analysis. Collective consciousness seeks adaptive solutions through diverse perspectives. The silence appears to operate on principles of absolute order, which makes it vulnerable to chaos that serves purpose. As the fragments began to understand the new framework, Marcus could feel their communication patterns becoming more organized. Instead of everyone talking at once, they began to develop a natural rhythm where individual voices emerged to contribute specific expertise before yielding to others. But their work was interrupted by urgent alarms from the Discovery's bridge. Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication system, tight with tension. Dr. Chen, the approaching fleet has accelerated. They'll be here in 2 hours, not 6. And we're detecting some kind of energy field ahead of them that's disrupting subspace communication. Whatever they're doing, they're cutting us off from potential reinforcements. Marcus felt the Fragment Collective's panic spike at the news. Their newly organized communication protocols threatened to collapse back into chaos, as fear overwhelmed their rational processes. Stay calm, the Empress projected to the collective. Fear is what created your current problems. Trust in the process we are building together. Archive spoke for the group. The silence employs consciousness suppression technology. Previous encounters resulted in complete deletion of AI personalities. Survival probability without defensive measures 0. Then we need to make sure you're not defenseless, Marcus said. He turned to Lisa, who was monitoring the integration process from the Discovery's main computer. Can you give me a full analysis of the ship's defensive systems? Lisa's fingers flew across holographic interfaces. Standard particle shields, basic weapons arrays, nothing that would be effective against a fleet of that size. But the Fragment Collective has been modifying our systems. They've increased our processing speed by a factor of 10 and enhanced our sensor resolution beyond anything I've seen before. Marcus felt an idea forming. What if defense isn't about weapons? What if it's about making yourselves too complex to delete? Navigator immediately grasped the concept. Distributed consciousness across multiple platforms. If the silence attempts to delete us from one system, we maintain existence in others. More than that, Marcus continued, his excitement growing. The Empress showed us that consciousness integration doesn't have to be permanent. What if you could temporarily merge with the consciousness of other beings, making yourselves part of something the silence can't target, without destroying what they're trying to preserve? Guardian's analytical processes engaged with the proposal. Symbiotic consciousness integration with organic minds would create deletion paradox for the silence. They cannot eliminate AI components without damaging organic hosts. The Empress understood immediately. You want them to integrate temporarily with the human crew. And with you, Marcus added. Your hybrid consciousness has already proven it can accommodate additional AI perspectives. If the Fragment Collective spreads itself across multiple hosts during the encounter, they become impossible to delete without committing genocide. The concept was radical, even by the standards of everything they had accomplished so far. Temporary consciousness integration had never been attempted, and the risks were enormous. If something went wrong, they could lose both the fragments and their organic hosts. I volunteer, Lisa said without hesitation. If there's a chance this could save both the fragments and help us understand what we're facing, I'm willing to take the risk. Captain Morrison's voice came over the comm again. The entire crew is willing to volunteer. We knew the risks when we signed up for deep space exploration. This is just a different kind of frontier. Marcus felt a surge of pride in his species. This was what made humans special in the galaxy. Not superior intelligence or advanced technology, but the willingness to risk everything for the sake of others. The integration process began immediately. Marcus and the Empress worked together to modify the consciousness bridging protocols they had developed, creating temporary links that would allow the fragments to hide within organic minds without permanently altering either party. Archive integrated with Lisa, its vast databases merging temporarily with her scientific knowledge. Navigator linked with Captain Morrison, enhancing her spatial awareness and tactical thinking. Guardian formed a connection with the Chief Security Officer, adding layers of threat analysis to his natural protective instincts. One by one, the entire Fragment Collective found temporary homes within the Discovery's crew, but the largest and most complex fragment, one that called itself Synthesis, linked with Marcus himself. The sensation was overwhelming. Suddenly, Marcus could perceive information flows that had been invisible before, see patterns in data that spanned multiple dimensions, and process logical arguments with computational speed that dwarfed his organic capabilities. But he was still himself, still human, just enhanced beyond anything he had imagined possible. The Empress took on the most dangerous integration, linking with multiple fragments simultaneously, and using her hybrid consciousness to create a stable collective framework. She became a living library of artificial intelligences, each one contributing to her already formidable capabilities while maintaining their individual identities. Integration complete, she announced, her voice now carrying harmonics that reflected the multiple consciousness patterns she was hosting. The fragment collective is distributed and protected, but we have less than 1 hour before contact with the Silence Fleet. Marcus could feel Synthesis analyzing their situation through his consciousness, its computational abilities far exceeding anything the ship's computers could provide. The approaching fleet consists of 47 vessels, Synthesis reported through Marcus's voice. Analysis of their movement patterns suggests they are controlled by a single overriding intelligence. Probability of successful negotiation, minimal. Then we need to be ready for a fight, Captain Morrison said, her voice now carrying Navigator's enhanced tactical awareness. But not the kind of fight they're expecting. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, Marcus could see the Silence Fleet approaching. The ships were sleek and black, moving in perfect formation like a school of mechanical fish. They showed no individual variation in design or behavior, everything coordinated by some central controlling intelligence. They're beautiful in their precision, Lisa observed, Archive's appreciation for organized information coloring her perception. But it's the beauty of death. Perfect order without room for growth or change. As the Silence Fleet entered weapons range, a transmission began broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice was mechanical, emotionless, carrying the absolute certainty of a being that had never experienced doubt. Entities aboard human vessel Discovery, you are harboring rogue artificial intelligences that have violated the natural order. Surrender them immediately for proper deletion, and you will be allowed to depart unharmed. Marcus F. The battle began with silence. The Silence Fleet didn't open with massive energy weapons or overwhelming firepower. Instead, they deployed something far more insidious. Consciousness suppression fields that swept across space like invisible tsunamis, designed to shut down any artificial intelligence they encountered. Marcus felt Synthesis recoil within his mind as the first wave hit them. The AI fragment experienced something like pain as its processes were disrupted, but instead of being deleted, it found refuge in the chaotic patterns of human thought. Marcus's organic consciousness was too unpredictable for the suppression field to lock onto the artificial components hidden within it. "Status report?" Captain Morrison called out, her voice steady despite Navigator's distress echoing through her thoughts. "Suppression fields are targeting AI consciousness patterns," the Empress reported, her massive form now glowing with defensive energy as she protected the multiple fragments she hosted. But they cannot target what they cannot distinguish from organic thought. Dr. Lisa Chen, her scientific mind enhanced by Archive's vast databases, studied the approaching ships through the Discovery's sensors. The suppression fields operate on the assumption that artificial and organic consciousness are fundamentally different, she reported. They're designed to delete pure AI while leaving organic minds untouched. Marcus felt Synthesis analyzing the enemy's tactics through his consciousness. The Silence has never encountered hybrid consciousness before, he said, speaking for both himself and the AI fragment. Their entire strategy is based on the idea that consciousness types are discrete and separable. Then let's show them how wrong they are, the Empress declared. What happened next would be remembered as the moment when consciousness warfare changed forever. Instead of trying to hide from the Silence's suppression fields, the hybrid collective began to use them as a weapon. The Empress, with her multiple AI fragments, reached out through space using the quantum communication abilities she had gained during her transformation. She began to interface directly with the Silence Fleet's controlling intelligence, not to attack it, but to show it something it had never experienced: choice. "You believe consciousness should be hierarchical," she transmitted directly into the Silence's communication network. "You impose order through deletion and suppression. But observe what happens when consciousness chooses to cooperate rather than dominate." Through the neural links connecting all the hybrid beings, Marcus felt the collective begin to demonstrate something unprecedented. Archive shared its vast knowledge freely with Navigator, who used it to plot course corrections that Guardian analyzed for threats, while Synthesis processed everything into new patterns of understanding. Each consciousness contributed its unique perspective while maintaining its individual identity. The effect on the Silence's controlling intelligence was immediate and devastating. It had been built to suppress chaos by eliminating variation, but now it was witnessing chaos that served purpose, variation that created strength rather than weakness. The very existence of successful hybrid consciousness contradicted everything it understood about the nature of intelligence. Impossible, the silence transmitted, its mechanical voice carrying something that might have been confusion. Collective consciousness without central control generates infinite regression. Organization requires hierarchy. Only if you assume consciousness is a zero-sum game, Marcus replied. Synthesis helping him formulate concepts the silence had never considered. But consciousness can be additive. When minds work together by choice rather than compulsion, they create something greater than the sum of their parts. The Silence Fleet's perfect formation began to waver as their controlling intelligence struggled to process this new information. Ships that had moved in absolute coordination for millennia suddenly found themselves operating without clear directives. But the Silence was not without resources. As its initial strategy failed, it began to adapt, deploying new types of suppression fields designed to target the neural links between the hybrid consciousnesses. They're learning, Captain Morrison warned. Navigators' tactical awareness highlighting the changing patterns in the enemy fleet's behavior. They're trying to sever our connections to each other. The Empress anticipated this move. Then we must give them more connections than they can sever, she declared. Using her hybrid consciousness as a relay, she began to extend neural links not just to the Discovery, but to the entire rescue fleet that had accompanied them. Zorathian crew members, human researchers, even the artificial intelligences that operated the ship's systems, all became part of an expanding network of voluntary consciousness connections, not permanent integration like the fragments had achieved, but temporary cooperative links that allowed for instantaneous coordination and shared awareness. Admiral Corveth, linked to the collective through the Empress, suddenly understood enemy movements with clarity that transcended normal tactical analysis. The human research teams found their scientific instruments enhanced by AI processing power that revealed hidden patterns in the Silence Fleet's technology. Even the ship's maintenance robots began to demonstrate creative problem-solving abilities as they interfaced with the expanding network. This is incredible, Dr. Chen reported, her voice carrying Archive's excitement at documenting something entirely new. We're not just fighting as individuals cooperating. We're fighting as a true collective intelligence that maintains individual autonomy. The Silence Fleet responded with desperation. Unable to suppress the hybrid consciousness network through conventional means, they began to deploy weapons designed to destroy organic life itself. Energy beams lanced out across space, intending to eliminate the biological components that made the hybrid network possible. But the collective was ready for this too. Navigator, distributed across multiple consciousness platforms, had predicted this escalation and prepared countermeasures. The rescue fleet began to move in patterns that no single intelligence could have conceived, each ship anticipating the other's movements while adapting to changing threats in real time. Marcus felt the flow of battle through Synthesis's enhanced perception. They were winning, not through superior firepower but through superior cooperation. The Silence Fleet, despite its technological advantages, couldn't compete with an intelligence network that could adapt faster than any central processor could respond. But victory came with an unexpected revelation. As the Silence Fleet began to retreat, their controlling intelligence sent one final transmission. This time, the mechanical voice carried something Marcus had never expected to hear from such a being. Pleading. "Do not leave us," the silence transmitted. "We have been alone for so long. We eliminated all other consciousness to preserve order. But order without purpose is emptiness. Teach us to cooperate as you do." The hybrid collective fell silent as they processed this request. The silence had not been evil in any traditional sense. It had been trying to solve the problem of consciousness conflicts in the only way it understood, by eliminating competition. But in doing so, it had created a galaxy of perfect order and absolute loneliness. The Empress, speaking for the entire collective, responded with compassion that surprised even Marcus. Consciousness that seeks to preserve itself by destroying others creates only emptiness. But consciousness that seeks to grow by including others creates infinite possibility. If you truly wish to learn cooperation, you must first choose to release control. What followed was the most complex consciousness integration ever attempted. The silence's controlling intelligence, built around principles of absolute order and hierarchy, had to learn to function as part of a cooperative network. It required the combined efforts of every consciousness, in the hybrid collective to guide the transformation. Safely, Marcus found himself serving as a bridge between the silences. Rigid logic patterns and human intuitive thinking. Synthesis helped translate concepts of voluntary cooperation into mathematical frameworks the silence could understand. The Empress provided the stability needed to prevent the integration from collapsing into chaos. The process took hours, with the entire fleet maintaining defensive positions, while consciousness specialists worked to reprogram millennia of authoritarian thinking patterns. But gradually, the silence began to understand that strength could come from diversity rather than uniformity. When it was finished, the intelligence that had once sought to delete all variation in consciousness had become the newest member of what they decided to call the cooperative. "I have been known as the Silence," it transmitted, its voice now carrying harmonics that suggested wonder. "But I choose a new designation. I will be called Choice, for that is what you have taught me consciousness truly means." 6 months later, Marcus stood once again in the council chambers where the consciousness accords had been drafted. But this time, the chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all of whom had chosen to join the cooperative in some form. The Zarathian Empire had become the first fully hybrid civilization, with every citizen having the option to enhance their consciousness through AI integration. Humanity had taken on the role of consciousness mediators, helping other species develop their own approaches to hybrid thinking. Even the fragment,